I didn't expect to catch my husband lying by hearing his voice in the baby's room when he was supposed to be miles away, working late. My name is Lena Hart. I'm 32 years old. I've always been the kind of person who finds comfort in order, clean spaces, color-coded calendars. Even meal prepping gave me a sense of control in a world that rarely makes sense. I met Ryan when I was 24, fresh out of grad school, and exhausted from trying to prove I had a place in publishing. He was 27, a software developer who radiated calm like a sedative. I mistook it for confidence. Maybe it was, once. We met at a mutual friends game night. He made a dry joke about how the only games he liked were ones with rules you could bend. I laughed, we talked, and by the end of the evening, I gave him my number without hesitation. That wasn't like me. But Ryan had a way of making you feel like you weren't just heard. You were studied, understood. We dated for 3 years before getting married. It wasn't dramatic. There was no grand proposal, no roller coaster of breakups and makeups. Everything with him felt solid, predictable, stable in a way that was almost seductive. I didn't realize back then that still waters can hide the deepest fractures. Our early years were good. Not exciting, but comforting. We shared a mortgage, divided chores, argued occasionally about dumb things like how he never rinsed out the coffee pot, or how I always left the bedroom light on too long. We had weekly grocery runs, Sunday morning pancakes, and the kind of routine you don't question when you're trying to build a life. He started working longer hours around our second anniversary. First, it was a big project. Then, a new client. Then, some internal restructuring that needed face time. I didn't push too hard. He always came home eventually, with Thai takeout or gas station flowers, and I convinced myself that effort still counted, even if it was inconsistent. When I got pregnant with Ellie, everything shifted. For me, it was like waking up in someone else's life. Suddenly, everything I thought I wanted didn't matter as much as this small, fluttering heartbeat inside me. I started scaling back my hours, said no to promotions, said yes to nesting. I thought Ryan would meet me there, in that space of shared wonder and responsibility. He didn't. He was supportive in a way. He came to the ultrasounds when he could. He read one parenting book, skimmed it, really, and built the crib we ordered online. He showed up, but not fully. He existed alongside me, not with me. When Ellie was born, I felt something crack between us. Not loudly, not in a dramatic collapse. It was more like a quiet fracture that spreads under pressure. He held her once in the hospital, stiff and awkward, like she might break if he breathed too hard. I thought maybe he was just scared, or overwhelmed, but months passed, then a year, and the space between us only grew. I handled the feedings, the diaper changes, the doctor's appointments. Ryan still claimed work was crazy, but I stopped asking questions. I started carrying both ends of the relationship because it felt easier than confronting the weight of his absence. To the outside world, we looked fine. Functional, even. We didn't yell, didn't throw things, didn't threaten divorce. We were polite in front of friends, smiled in pictures, sent holiday cards with matching pajamas. No one asked if we were happy, and we didn't volunteer the answer. But in the quiet moments, when Ellie napped, when the dishes were drying, when I lay in bed beside a man whose body barely faced mine, I began to wonder if stability was just a slower form of disintegration. Then the late night started, again. Code reviews, urgent meetings, systems going down. He had a story for every absence, every time he walked in after midnight smelling faintly of fabric softener. I didn't buy. Still, I said nothing. Because even when the puzzle pieces stop fitting, you don't throw them out immediately. You try to force them back together, until something finally forces you to see the picture clearly. And for me, that moment came not from suspicion or gut instinct or confrontation. It came from a tiny square screen on a baby monitor, from a voice I knew too well. The night it all began felt like any other. Ryan said he'd be staying late. Again. Something about a product demo for a high-value client in a different time zone. I didn't even question it. Just nodded and replied, "Okay, don't wake her when you get in." Ellie had been especially clingy that day, refusing to nap unless I held her. I was drained by bedtime, and all I wanted was 1 hour of silence. After her bath, I tucked her in, dimmed the nursery lights, turned on the baby monitor, and shuffled off to my room with a glass of water and a dead phone battery I didn't care to charge. I left the monitor volume up, just in case. At 10:43 p.m., I was lying in bed in the dark, listening to the low white noise hum from the monitor. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't alert either. Not until I heard it. A voice. Not crying. Not babbling. A low, soft murmur. Deep, familiar, and right inside the nursery. I sat up, every nerve in my body alert. The voice came again. "You're okay. Baby girl. It's all right. Daddy's here." My blood stopped moving. I reached for the monitor and stared at the screen. There was movement. The resolution wasn't perfect, but I could see him. Tall frame, slightly hunched as he leaned over. The crib. Hoodie sleeves rolled halfway up his arms. He stroked Ellie's back, whispering gently. It was Ryan. He was in her room, but he wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the house. I pressed mute on the monitor and just watched. He stayed for another minute, then quietly slipped out of the frame. A second later, our hallway camera picked him up. He walked down the hall, past our bedroom door, then disappeared into the guest room. My heart pounded, but I didn't move. I didn't call his name. I didn't open the door. I just stayed frozen, breathing shallowly like I was the one who'd been caught. And then it hit me. He never left. He didn't go to the office. Didn't attend any demo. He had parked somewhere else, entered the house quietly, and stayed hidden. Why? The question kept bouncing around in my skull. There was no logical answer. If he was cheating, why be inside the house? Why sneak around like a burglar in his own home? Why comfort Ellie if he was trying to disappear from her life? Was this some kind of twisted performance? Was he playing both roles? Absent father and ghost caregiver? I got out of bed. I didn't hear any footsteps. No doors opening. The house was silent again. I tiptoed down the hallway, peeked into the guest room. It was empty. The bed was untouched. I checked the garage. His car wasn't there. Then I remembered. He had a second set of keys to my neighbor's place across the street. They traveled often and trusted us to check their mail, water their plants. I opened our front door slowly and scanned the street. There, it was, parked in their driveway. Ryan's car, no doubt. I closed the door, locked it, and sat on the living room couch, staring at nothing for a long time. When he walked in through the front door at 12:08 a.m., he looked surprised to see the light still on. Not startled, just mildly curious. "You're still up?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep." He yawned. "God, that meeting dragged forever." I said nothing. He leaned over and kissed my forehead, then wandered into the kitchen. I could hear him opening the fridge, whistling quietly. So casual, like everything was fine. Like I hadn't just watched him on a baby monitor whispering to our daughter under the illusion of being somewhere else. It wasn't just the lie that stunned me. It was how easily it came out of him. He wasn't even trying to hide the truth well, because he didn't think I was looking, and that told me something deeper than any confession ever could. He thought I'd stopped seeing him clearly. He thought I'd stopped paying attention. He thought I wouldn't notice if he vanished. Piece by piece, right in front of me. The morning after I saw him on the baby monitor, I reorganized the pantry. Not out of stress. Not as a distraction. I wanted to measure how long I could function around a lie without acknowledging it. I wanted to see if pretending came as easily to me as it did to him. Canned beans, rice, oatmeal, all lined up, labels forward, quantities logged in a notebook I didn't usually use. I timed myself between chores, fed Ellie, swept the hallway, took note of when Ryan finally left the house at 9:13 a.m., a full 43 minutes after pretending to rush out for early calls. He kissed my cheek on his way out. I didn't flinch. That's when I realized he had no idea I'd seen him. Not even a hint of hesitation in his movements. He assumed I was still sleepwalking through our routine, hands full with Ellie, head just above water. It wasn't just deception. It was arrogance. So I adjusted my approach. I turned the guest room into a staging area, installed a second baby monitor without telling him. Not in the nursery, He'd noticed that. I placed it in the hallway, camouflaged in a pile of Ellie's stuffed animals beside the linen closet. It gave me a clean audio feed of the night corridor and the sound of the back door opening and closing. I kept a small journal, documented his comings and goings with timestamps. He left the house 3 nights in a row that week. I said nothing. Instead, I printed a screenshot from the nursery feed and taped it to the inside of my makeup drawer. It wasn't for confrontation. It was a checkpoint for my own sanity. A reminder that I wasn't imagining any of this, that the version of reality I was living in, the version he built, was rigged. It was the 4th night that broke the pattern. He left at 10:46 p.m., but this time, instead of going to the neighbor's place, he returned through the front door at 11:32, holding a bag of fast food and humming like someone who'd just done something harmless, like he needed a decoy alibi, in case I'd stayed awake. He handed me the bag without a word. I took it. We sat at the table. He ate. I watched. It took everything in me not to ask, "What do you think I am? A background extra in your double life?" But that would have made it real. And I wasn't ready for that. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't finished collecting. I had stopped being his wife in that moment. I was something else. Now, an observer. And observers don't interrupt the story. They finish it. He started waking up before me. That was new. I'd hear the shower running at 5:40 a.m. instead of 7. His footsteps were quieter. His movements, carefully calculated. He'd step over the one floorboard that creaked, shut doors with 2 hands, even switch off the hallway light from the wall outside the room instead of inside. He was trying to stop taking up space, and I let him. No ultimatums were issued. No apologies demanded. There was no screaming. Just a growing vacancy where something human used to live between us. Every morning, I'd set 2 mugs on the table. One with coffee, one empty. I never pointed out which was his. He had to guess. Some days he chose right. Some days he didn't. Either way, I drank from mine in silence and watched him attempt relevance. That was the system now. Ellie became the referee, without knowing. He'd overperform when she was in the room, sing during diaper changes, tell exaggerated stories while feeding her breakfast. She responded like kids do when adults force cheerfulness. Short attention, no eye contact, occasional squirming. She didn't withdraw. She just neutralized him, as if she sensed he wasn't the real source of comfort anymore, just an accessory performing the role. Friends stopped inviting us to things, not because they knew the details, because they sensed something had shifted. We'd walk into a room and people would lean toward me when speaking, as if he were peripheral. Some gave me those long, deliberate looks, half sympathy, half curiosity. No one ever asked me what happened. They could feel it. Ryan kept trying to insert himself back into normal. He asked if I wanted to go out. He offered to book us a weekend. Away. He suggested we revisit counseling, though he never named what for. Every offer was met with the same answer. A slow blink, a polite nod, and nothing else. He began losing weight. Not dramatically, just enough for people to notice. His belt cinched tighter. His watch hung looser. His smile didn't quite reach either side of his face anymore. He looked like someone constantly expecting a verdict. But there was no trial. There. Never would be. This wasn't about justice or revenge. This was about inversion. He used to carry the silence in our home like a weapon, holding back affection, withholding time, disappearing into meetings. Now that silence belonged to me, and it surrounded him every time he entered a room. Not loud, not cruel, just absolute. One night, he stood at the foot of our bed for a long time, eyes on me, waiting for some form of acknowledgement. He didn't speak. Eventually, I reached for the lamp and turned it off. And that was the only conversation we had that mattered. Most people think endings happen all at once. A confrontation, a confession, a slammed door, a packed suitcase, a dramatic exit that cues the credits. But what I lived through wasn't a break. It was a decay. He never moved out. I never asked him to. And yet, day by day, he occupied less space, until even his breath felt borrowed. I began removing his name from things. Quietly, surgically. I revised our shared streaming profiles. His, icon replaced by a guest account. I updated medical forms to list only myself as Ellie's emergency contact. I switched to solo billing on utilities and unsubscribed him from every household service. He never brought it up. Maybe he noticed. Maybe he assumed it was some glitch in the system. Truthfully, it was. I became the glitch, an unrecognizable version of the woman he used to share a bed with, and that was the key. Forgiveness? Not required. Closure? Not interesting. What mattered was this. I took away the narrative he thought he controlled. I didn't become bitter. I became unreadable. He tried to initiate a conversation once. Late afternoon. I was folding towels in the living room while Ellie napped. He stood in the doorway, clearing his throat like someone preparing a script. "I know I messed up," he began. I didn't stop folding, just nodded once and kept going. A blue towel, a green one. "The bath mat." He tried again. "If you want to talk, you're talking," I said. "I'm just not writing your lines anymore." That was the last time he tried. From then on, he stayed out of my way. Not like a man respecting boundaries, but like someone afraid of triggering a second trap. He walked softly through the days. He cooked dinner occasionally, helped with Ellie's bath, kept receipts, the image of contribution, of stability, but it was too perfect, mechanical. Like a man rehearsing for custody. He never once asked if I was leaving him. That's the funny part. I already had. Not physically, but systemically. I was no longer in that marriage. I was its shadow. I let it keep existing because I wanted to. Observe how long he could live inside something hollow before realizing it had no center. Eventually, he did. 3 months after the baby monitor incident, he came home late again. No excuse. No alibi, just silence. His face looked older, like he'd been fighting himself in every reflective surface all day. He walked into the kitchen, paused, and said, "I think I should go stay somewhere else for a while." I didn't respond. He packed 2 bags, one with clothes, one with his laptop and chargers. I stayed on the couch with a book open on my lap, barely turning the pages. When he left, the door didn't slam. It clicked shut like a chapter ending mid-sentence, and I didn't feel free. I felt accurate. Weeks. Past Ellie asked about him less often than I expected. Kids are more intuitive than adults give them credit for. She didn't cry. She didn't act out. She simply realigned, like furniture shifting in a room after someone moves out. I saw him once after that, at a pharmacy. He looked thinner, tired, in the eyes. He smiled halfway and said, "Hey," like we were former coworkers running into each other after a layoff. I nodded, said nothing, and walked past him. No hate, no anger, just quiet certainty that I had chosen myself, and he had chosen nothing. People ask what finally convinced me to let go, but I never held on. I simply gave him enough silence to prove what he'd fill it with. Turns out, not much. That's the last part no one warns you about. Sometimes the villain in your story doesn't destroy you. They just erase themselves. One cowardly choice at a time.